This is Thank You Mama, weekly lessons from mothers all around the world. Hi and welcome to Thank You Mama. My guest today is Ilona Dreyer. Hi, Ilona.
Hi, Anna.
Hi, Ilona is talking to us from South Africa. Ilona is actually born and raised in Namibia, and she's the third generation German in Namibia. Ilona, I was very surprised when I heard that there are generations and generations of Germans in Namibia. Will you tell us about this?
So my grandparents and part of my great-grandparents immigrated, coming from Germany, mostly the part that's now Poland, so Prussia. And at that stage, when they moved, it was called German Southwest Africa. And I would say late 19th century to 20th century, about 3,000 plus minus Germans immigrated to Namibia and settled. That's how our families got there.
And that's how you're still there?
Yes, part of my family is definitely still there. Part has moved. So we have family back in Germany again, family in the States. Yeah, a little bit scattered.
And you went back to Germany to study there. You studied in Germany and you started working in Germany. You studied hotel management?
Yes, that's correct. So when we grew up, or the way we grew up in being German, we were obviously always intrigued what Germany is like, because we speak the language, but in essence, they still try to keep traditions in Namibia. And even in South Africa, there's a big German community here. So we've got stuff like Oktoberfest and very classical German things. But inevitably, you want to know what is Germany like. So my parents said, if you want to go have a look, go overseas, study, and spend 10 years in Germany.
And you met your husband in Germany.
Oh, that's correct, yes.
And he's German?
My husband is, yes, what we would call German.
German, not Namibian German.
He comes from Germany, yes. And we got stuck in South Africa because we loved the country so much. And he studied here for a year. And for us, it was a little bit neutral ground. So not Namibia, not Germany. And and we live in Joburg now, have since 2011. And we really love it. We find it's a brilliant, vibrant city.
And you started your business there together?
Yes, we built a business together over the past 8 years, doing high-end made-to-measure for men, from shirts over to coats. But now we specialized in shirts. The market is, I think, very tough in general, worldwide. And probably the future, or we believe that the future is made to measure or to make clothes on demand. So you only produce what is needed.
And you have your mom of two.
Yes, I've got a boy and a girl. Boy being the older one. He's just turned 6, mid of January. And our daughter has turned 4 last year, mid of October. So it was a stretch, being 21 months apart. It was very sporty, I can tell you, the first year.
Wow. But you had a great guide in all of this. And let's hear about the guide. Let's hear about Mama Heidi. Will you introduce her to us?
Yes, I'd love to. So my mom was born in 1955 in a very small town in Namibia, in Usakos. And her real name, or proper name, is actually Heidrun. But I don't think anyone ever called her that, to be honest. I think maybe my grandmother did a few times, but mostly she's Heidi to everyone. And she's the second born of 4 girls. For her parents, I think she's the most responsible one, if I can say it like that. I don't really know. Yeah, I hope I'm not stepping on any toes here. Her parents divorced when the youngest one, so my aunts, left the house. And my mom studied to become laboratory technician. And one of those things that I found, I think, the most fascinating about my mom is that she saved most of her money, obviously. And when she studied, it's not really a lot, or it wasn't really a lot. And she traveled Europe as a backpacker for 6 months with her best friend when she was 21.
I think we calculated, she managed to save around what today would be $120 or something like this.
Yeah. So in those days, it was quite a lot. It was 2,000 rand. Even today, 2,000 rand, I don't think that much if you want to travel Europe, but managed, and they did everything on backpack and hiking. They loved it. And my mom saw Europe coming from a house where there was never money to spare. She had a very poor upbringing, and for her it was a brilliant trip. She talks about it a lot.
And then she met your father and got married after Europe?
Yeah, she met my dad before that, but she told him it doesn't matter what's going to happen, I'm going to go on to that trip. So my dad said with a twinkle in his eye once, he was really afraid she's going to get stuck somewhere. Yeah, if you know my mom, I think the chances were slim to none. She's very devoted if it comes to that. And she loves my dad still to pieces, I think. They both do. And it's actually admirable to see. They still hold hands and they cuddle. And I mean, they're married now this year for 40 years, which I think it's a brilliant aim for every one of us who's married.
It's an achievement.
Yes.
So then they got married and they started a business together.
Yes. So I was born in they got married in 1980 and I was born in 1982, and in 1983 they started a business together. My dad is a diesel mechanic, or he studied that, and he's very good in what he does. So in 1983 they bought a small company, and they kicked out the automotive part and kept the tractors and spares, and they expanded to agricultural implements and services and repairs. Yeah, and they've been going ever since.
Wow, they are still running their business.
Still running. My dad turned 70 this year, and we're always hoping that he's slowly but surely is going to take it a bit slower. And my mom still does all the books, and obviously now she's got help. But I remember when we grew up, she used to do the books at night when we were asleep.
So you have two brothers. It's you and two brothers. So she had 3 children.
Yes.
She took care of you during the day, and then in the evening she was doing books for the company.
Yes. She only went back to work I'm the oldest one, and the younger one, Torsten, is 2 years younger than me. And when we both went into kindergarten at the age of 3, she went back to work half days. And then the last born is 5 years younger than Torsten. So she stayed at home another, I think, 2 years until he went to kindergarten, and the whole circle repeated itself a bit.
So let me hear, what did you take from Mama Heidi? I'm very curious to hear about what do you feel are the most important things you've learned from her. Ooh.
Yeah, it's actually a lot. And to be really honest with you, you only realize when you're a bit older, you start to realize and also see what they meant when they're trying to bring you up as I almost want to say decent human being. But I think one of the key words that pops in mind is diplomacy and understanding. So my mom is very diplomatic, I'm assuming, because she came from a household where there was a bit of fighting when they grew up. So she always tries to sort of keep the peace and mediate in our family. And she does it very well, I think. We don't have any big fights in our family. And she always tries to be very, very patient and understanding. And also with our kids, yeah, I think over the times that we grew up, and she taught us that you need to be understanding towards different people, and also understanding towards yourself, due to the fact that you don't know in what position the other person is. So be understanding until you understand it. And for yourself, we had a long road. I think each and every one of us, so me and my brothers, we needed a bit of time to find our feet also, because all of us studied in Germany, and it's a tough time. And sometimes you need to understand yourself first before you realize what you can do or what you want to achieve. And she helped with that quite a lot, actually.
And you mentioned something very interesting, which my mom was teaching me very actively, which was to look at every angle of a story.
She's very good at that. It's true.
Was she active about this? Because my mom was always like, look, you really have to. She was really actively trying to teach me how to always try to consider every angle and every person and every different circumstance of the story.
Yes, I think probably not as active, but more in a subtle way. And I think she also needed to, because my dad is very straightforward. And if he says something, he says it, I don't know how you phrase it in English, I think you would say straight to the point. And she tried to even it out a bit by being very understanding and trying to obviously trying to make us see that sometimes you can also achieve the opposite by telling someone straight to their face that maybe the sweater they're wearing is not the color you like. You could say it in a more diplomatic way. She definitely did, and I think it shaped all three of us. And sometimes I think it shaped my youngest brother the most. He's probably the most diplomatic one of us.
And you also mentioned that she was teaching you that every person has a good side to themselves.
Yes, and I truly believe it, because not only because my mom taught us, but because when you get a bit older, you start to understand what she actually meant with it. Obviously, we teach our kids the same, or my husband and I do. And if you see that somewhere it bears fruits, that you keep telling them every day, you might not like the boy, but put yourself into his shoes. Maybe he feels insecure, or maybe he feels that you're not integrating him. And then you have the small little thing where he comes home and says, "Mom, I played with this boy today, and he's actually really nice." So I guess that's my parents then coming through, and you just think, okay, they were actually right. When you were young, believe it, but when you grow older and have kids on your own and you experience all of this, then you say, yes, they do have a point.
Yeah, you understand their point. It takes a new generation. Ilona, you were mentioning how amazed you were that she always managed to treat your brothers and you in the same way, that she never showed any preference for another child. That's interesting for me, because I think the last interview I did, my guest said how her mom claimed that her daughter is her cup of coffee. She's the one who she connects more to and thinks one day if she needs something, she will be there for her, and not her two brothers. And my friend is trying to teach her children, or treat her children in the same equal way, and not have a cup of coffee, not choose a cup of coffee among them. Tell me about that. Do you think that goes under this diplomatic trait?
To be honest, I don't know if it goes under the diplomatic trait, but I think my mom grew up like that because they were 4 siblings, and I only have 2 kids. But as a parent of 2, and I've got 2 very different kids, not because it's a boy and girl, but also in character. I think she tried from the beginning, because we are 1 girl and 2 boys. She made a point of it that when we, for instance, when the Easter Bunny came, there were exactly the right amount of eggs to split amongst the 3 of us. There were the right amount of chocolates, just a small example. And when we went and studied, all 3 of us were, she always says, you have the choice of doing an apprenticeship and studying at the university. And so they took out study funds for all of the 3 of us. And we were all able to do it because they gave us the choice, and they told us that it's your choice, but we decided you're all gonna be able to do it. Through our whole life, it was like that. Obviously, you will always have small little things where you felt, okay, as the eldest one, you felt a little bit neglected because you were only allowed to drive at 10 years, learn how to drive at 10 years, and the younger one was allowed to drive at 8 years. But
wait, what? You started driving at 10?
Yes, and in Namibia it's a bit different because we grew up on the weekends on a farm. We had 1 big dirt road, and miles and miles and miles, there's nothing. There's just this road. And also for a lot of other reasons, but once we could sort of look over the steering wheel, we told our dad, we want to learn how to drive. And he said, okay. And we got this really old Toyota. I think anything was able to brake in that.
But can your feet even reach the pedals when you're 10?
Yes.
Or 8?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
I think even if I would ask my brothers today, obviously to tease me, they will always say, you were always the sweetheart. But
because you're the girl.
Yes, but I think no, we all had the same opportunities, or our parents gave us the same opportunities, and they just never preferred one child over the other. And I try to do that with my kids, and I know it's tough sometimes because you have such different characters and such different children. But truly believe that if you manage to treat the kids equal, you will have a better adult when they grow up, because the understanding is there, the fear of missing out or the fear of being neglected. You don't give it a chance to develop, I feel. But I'm not a psychologist, so we do as we learn how we get it as we go along, no? What was it?
We parents wish we were psychologists. I was just watching my friend during lunch yesterday struggle with his child who didn't want to eat the fish. And I thought, wow, you get trained for all these different things, driving a car, I don't know, doing your job, using a computer. You get zero training to become a parent. And you somehow, as you said, you just learn as you go. You do your best.
Yeah, exactly. And hopefully one day we look back and said, okay, we probably did 80% right. And one day I'll be very happy.
Ilona, but talking about love and parenting, it was beautiful how you mentioned that she gave all three of you this feeling of unconditional love, and she was really always there for you without spoiling you. And we talked about how that's actually a holy grail of parenting. And my husband and I spend a lot of time discussing this. How do you give this feeling of unconditional support and love, but don't spoil a child? What did she do? Tell us about it.
My mom she was always very, very consequent. So a no was a no. And she always explained to us why there's a no. Obviously, when we grew older, you sort of at some point challenge it and argue about it. But I think being consequent was what she managed with us, I think, very well, because we knew, obviously you try your luck, but we knew a no was a no. And yes, you try to convince your dad, but normally he was just looking, your mom said no, then it's a no. And it gives you also a great guidance as a kid. Subconsciously, you don't realize it. I don't think so. And we try to do the same with our kids, which is really tough. And I can only imagine how my mom felt working, because what I see, and I also think it's sometimes a mistake that we do, is when you both work, you feel a little bit of a guilt trip towards your kids when you only spend the afternoon with them, or you only spend the weekends with them, or only the evenings. You don't spend enough time with them, so you try to compensate that. But I think that's one of the things where we try to be very consequent, is that if we say today we're going to go or on the weekends we're going to go and take you on a bike ride, then come hell or high water, we'll take them for a bike ride. Yeah, I think it gives a child a great guidance a bit.
And talking about working and having children.
Probably one of the subjects where in the last 20 years, or probably even longer, a lot of things were written.
I know, but let's hear from Mama Heidi about it. So you were telling me about one of the things you think you learned from her was being thorough. You mentioned doing everything 100%.
I think it was for her very difficult being a laboratory technician and having that, I think it's a gene that you inherit. I think somehow being this efficient and being this perfectionist in some ways. So
sorry, I'm happy you mentioned a gene, because we talked about it. My first reaction was, isn't this very German? And then I told you about how I learned that BMW apparently has a motto for their engineers, which is first time right.
Yes.
No mistakes, pure efficiency.
I think there's always room for errors, but I think maybe, and I don't want to generalize, but I think in a lot of ways, the German people do have that urge a bit. Don't do work that you don't need to do if you can do it right the first time. Maybe it's got also a little bit to do with laziness. Not in a bad way, but I see it with my mom. She says, if I can avoid doing something 2 or 3 or 4 times, if I can get it right the first time, I don't need to do it 3 or 4 times. I'll just try my best to do it right the first time. And if I don't manage the first time, she's got these lists. So my mom writes a list for everything. Every small little thing. Might it be an Excel spreadsheet, might it be a Word document. Whenever she does something, she writes a list of the pros, the cons, the stuff that she took from her first experience. So she did, for instance, because we come from a very small town, when we went to school, there was a soccer coach missing, I think for the under 14s or 12s. I think it was 14, for the boys. So my mom said, okay, my children will one day probably play soccer, and all of us did. So she started to train the under 14 boys in soccer, on top of having 3 kids and having her own business. And she did, I think for today, it was brilliant. She ordered tapes from Germany. What are the new technical steps, or how to train, what's new, what's innovative to get a small team going, and how to train boys, how to train soccer. And she looked at that at home, and she made sketches, and I think my mom did a brilliant job.
Whatever she does it seriously, obviously. How did she manage all of that?
Sometimes I don't know, to be really honest. I don't know.
We talked about this as well, about finding the right balance, which is so hard as a working parent.
Yes, I think it's incredibly hard, and I always think I never want to judge, but I'm not always so sure that she found the right balance in her private life, but the balance between work and family, she did. I think she's always got time for us. It doesn't matter if we call at 4 o'clock in the morning or at 1 o'clock before she goes on her lunch, if I can call it like that. She always has time for us, even if she just picks up the phone and says, honey, I'll call you back in 15 minutes. I've got someone standing in front of me. I love that about my mom. It doesn't matter with what I come or my brothers. She always makes time for a phone call, and she always takes time to listen, to understand, which we've discussed.
When you said her private life, do you think she neglected herself a little bit?
Yes, I unfortunately, I think she did. But to understand why, I think you need to understand the way that she grew up. If you grow up and you don't have a lot, and I think we all are in a way like that, then you try to give your children the possibility or the possibilities that you didn't have. We were able to study in Europe, and we were able to do an apprenticeship and fly back home once a year. So she managed all of that, and I think that was what was driving her. Being a mom, you can understand it. If you're not a parent, it's difficult to understand that sort of devotion, but once you have kids, I think we all are like that. You want the best in your means possible for them.
You do. And this is why now among working moms in America, the main word today is self-care. There's so many women sending this message out to other women and saying, please don't forget about yourself. You're in this for a long run. You need to take care of yourself as well. So that's the big trend now, is trying to recognize what it means and how to incorporate this in your life that's already busy with work and being a parent. It's not easy.
No, it's not. And I don't think there's a formula for it, to be honest.
No, I think everybody has to figure it out for themselves, because it means a different thing for everybody, you know?
Yes. But you said a very valid point. I think if you have a functioning family, so one where the husband also steps up and says, you know what, I'll bring the kids to school today, or I'll do breakfast. I am so fortunate to have a relationship like that. If my husband says, I can see you're quite busy this morning, let me bring the kids to school. And he just does it. I think those small little things, is if you work as a team, is what I've learned from my parents. And I try to incorporate that into my marriage. And I was so fortunate that I found my husband, who comes from a different continent, but comes with similar principles and grew up similarly in that way. And I think we are a brilliant team, and my parents are as well. And if you work together as a family, you manage, or at least we do, so much better. Because my husband is now away for 2.5 weeks.
Now you see.
No, but I know it. And then obviously it also reminds you of all the small little things that he does that you sometimes don't see or don't realize, and vice versa. So when I'm gone sometimes for 2 or 3 days, he says, sometimes it's good that you go, because then I realize how much you actually do. So I think we've got a good balance, and I think that definitely comes from my mom and my dad, always working as a team on everything. Not always being one and having the same opinions, but always working as a team, yeah.
Ilona, thank you so much for this. Would you let me recap the lessons we learned from Mama Heidi?
Yes, sure.
Let me see if I got them right. So we learned from Mama Heidi to be diplomatic and to always look at the different sides of a story, and to always try to find a good in everybody. We learned to love all our children equally, to give our children unconditional love, but without spoiling them. The holy grail of parenthood, which she's done by very, very, very strong consequences. She was always very consequent in everything. To be thorough and efficient, if nothing else, to save time and energy, and not to have to do things twice. And the last one, which I thought was very interesting, is to work as a team with your partner. Am I missing something?
No, I think you recapped it quite well.
Thank you. Ilona, thank you so much for being my guest and sharing Mama Heidi with us.
Pleasure, Anna. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk about my mom and also remembering things that she's taught us and situations that we were in. Very fond memories. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share it with you.
Thank you, Ilona. If you enjoy Thank You, Mama, and want to help it grow, please take the 2 seconds to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps. If you'd like to get in touch, you can send me a mail at info@thankyouMama.net. You can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter under Anna Tajder, that's Tajder. This was Thank You Mama. Come back next week, subscribe, and tell your friends.